Pine Ridge Elementary was one of those schools where the moment you stepped in, you could feel a sense of peace. Nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Colorado, the school wasn't too big nor too small. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, from the principal, who always wore beige skirts and carried a small notebook, to the bearded security guard who brewed tea every morning. The dark green iron gate at the entrance was flanked by rows of red maple trees, shedding their leaves as autumn arrived. Along the old brick walls, children's drawings were proudly displayed in colorful rows full of life. In the afternoons when school let out, Pine Ridge came alive with a unique kind of bustle. Familiar sounds filled the air: the shuffle of sneakers on concrete, children calling out to one another, and the hum of engines lining the student pickup zone. Parents leaned on their steering wheels, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the crowd of little faces spilling out of the main building. Among them was a little girl named Ava Morgan, just 7 years old and a student in Class 2B. Ava was well-behaved and quiet, not as rowdy as her classmates. Every Friday afternoon, she would sit patiently on the steps outside the main building, her small purple backpack decorated with a crowned cat resting on her back. In her hand was a water bottle adorned with rainbow stickers, and on her feet were silver sneakers that glittered when the sunlight hit them just right. Ava's mother, Rachel Morgan, was a veterinarian working at a clinic more than 10 miles away. Because of the nature of her job, sometimes performing emergency surgeries, sometimes monitoring a dog with seizures, Rachel was usually about 10 to 15 minutes late. But Ava never complained. Instead, she had a special habit counting red cars that passed by. "First one," she would whisper. "Second one, the third. 9 already. Mommy should be here soon." To her, it was a little game, something to pass the time, but also a way to stay connected to her mother. Rachel had once told her that the first car she ever owned back in college was an old red sedan, and Ava always thought red cars were Mom's kind of car. Anyone who passed by the school often would surely see Ava sitting there, quietly, legs swinging, eyes fixed on the distant corner where cars emerged down the street. But that day, Ava wasn't alone. Just a few meters away, lounging calmly beneath the shade of a cherry tree, was Rex, a retired K-9 police dog who now served as the ambassador of the school's therapeutic program called Paws and Peace. Rex had once belonged to the Fairfield County Police Department, renowned for his sharp instincts and outstanding tracking skills. Though already 11 years old, considered elderly for a working dog, his eyes still gleamed with alertness, sharp and intelligent enough to make anyone take him seriously. Rex now lived with Elena Cruz, a former police officer who had been his handler and partner for many years. After retiring due to an injury sustained in the line of duty, Elena couldn't stand the idea of Rex doing nothing, so she enrolled them both in the special program that Pine Ridge Elementary was launching. Every Friday, they would visit the school, spending time with students who needed comfort. Children who were shy, anxious, or overwhelmed often found peace simply by sitting next to Rex. He never judged. He simply lay there, eyes half closed, tail tapping gently against the ground. To Ava, Rex wasn't just a dog, he was a friend. Every Friday when her mom was late, Ava would sit next to Rex, playing with his ears or scratching the thicker fur at his neck. Rex liked that it was enough to make him nod slowly, as if to say, "I accept this kid." Elena sat not far away, always watching both Ava and the other children, sometimes jotting notes into a small notebook. She often said, "Rex doesn't bark without reason. If he gets up, something's wrong." That Friday afternoon seemed like any other, quiet, warm, and uneventful. But that illusion was about to shatter. A man neither Ava nor Elena had ever seen before began making his way toward the girl. His smile was soft, his gaze warm and friendly, but Rex had already sensed something no human could. That day, the 12th red car Ava counted wasn't her mom's, and that was the moment when everything began to change. Late that afternoon, as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting golden streaks of light across the schoolyard, Ava had just counted the 14th red car. Her eyes lit up for a moment, only to dim again as she looked quietly down at her silver shoes gently swinging. It wasn't her mom's car. Reaching into her backpack, she pulled out a picture book and started flipping through the pages, her small fingers brushing gently across the vibrant illustrations. At the far end of the pickup zone, a man walked slowly past the parked cars. He wasn't rushed like the usual after-work parents scrambling to beat traffic. His clothing, a dark navy overcoat and a neatly draped gray scarf, was carefully chosen. His leather shoes gleamed, his silver hair combed back with precision, and his wire-rimmed glasses gave him a scholarly, gentle appearance. Elena Cruz noticed him the moment he stepped through the school gate. A former homicide detective, she had long since honed a sixth sense sharper than most. He didn't look like a regular parent. No staff member greeted him. What caught her attention most was how he didn't glance around for anyone. He walked straight toward Ava as if he already knew exactly where she'd be. Ava, lost in her story about a rabbit in the forest, was startled by a warm male voice. "Ava, it's Grandpa, sweetie. I'm here to pick you up today." She looked up. In front of her stood a tall man smiling gently. But Ava didn't smile. Her brow furrowed and she stared at his face with suspicion. She didn't move. She clutched her picture book tightly against her chest. "Don't you remember me?" The man stepped closer. "Your mom asked me to come. She's working late at the clinic." Rex was still lying under the cherry tree then, but the moment the man spoke those words, his ears twitched sharply. His whole body stiffened, his back straightened as if jolted by electricity. A low, heavy growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Elena immediately turned. In all her time of volunteering at the school, Rex had never growled like this. She quickly stepped toward him, gripping his leash gently, but Rex's gaze remained locked onto the man. Ava backed up a step. She shook her head slowly. You're not my grandpa." The man faltered, but only for a split second. He chuckled softly and lowered his voice kindly. "Oh, sweetheart, it's just been a while since we saw each other. That's why you don't remember. I'm your Grandpa Jacob. Don't you remember the trip to the zoo? You loved the giraffes." Ava hesitated. Her eyes flicked between his face and Rex, who was now standing fully upright, fur bristling, eyes sharp and glowing with warning. Elena felt the steady pull on the leash. Rex was ready to lunge. "Something's not right," Elena whispered, not taking her eyes off the man. Nearby parents began to notice. A mother stepped out of her SUV, frowning at the unfolding scene. A teaching assistant packing up school supplies paused, watching intently. Sensing the growing attention, the man pulled a leather wallet from his coat pocket. "I can show you my ID. Here, Jacob Morgan. Same last name as her mom, right?" But Ava was trembling now. She backed all the way toward Rex, eyes wet, shaking her head vigorously. He doesn't smell like Grandpa," Ava said in a small voice. "My grandpa smells like cinnamon and soap. This man, he smells like damp wood and metal." Rex barked one loud, echoing command that cut across the entire schoolyard. Elena instinctively let go of the leash with one hand, the other dropping to her hip, where her holster used to be. Even after leaving the force, her instincts never faded. "Sir," Elena stepped between Ava and the man, voice firm and unwavering. "I need you to step back. The child says she doesn't know you, and this dog, he doesn't get it wrong." The man's face changed. The smile faded. His voice dropped, edged with irritation. "I have legal documents. I am here on time to pick up my granddaughter. She's just scared. I don't understand how a dog determines what's dangerous here." Elena didn't respond. Her hand clenched the leash, still vibrating with tension, as Rex continued barking, each bark sharp and deliberate. Behind them, a young teacher was quietly dialing 911. A cool breeze swept through the schoolyard, carrying with it an unsettling chill. Conversations hushed. Eyes turned. Parents and staff now fully focused on what had started as a simple pickup moment, but had quickly become something far more serious. And Rex, he still hadn't stopped. His eyes were fixed not on the man now, but on the black leather briefcase he carried tightly under his arm. The air in the schoolyard suddenly seemed to thicken, slowing time itself. A few gentle breezes stirred, carrying dried leaves that danced through the air like a silent warning of something not quite right. And amidst that quiet setting, Rex's sharp bark shattered the calm, drawing every pair of eyes. But Rex didn't just bark. He growled and yanked hard on his leash, the fur along his spine bristling like jagged blades. His deep brown eyes, so gentle when seated beside schoolchildren, were now filled with alertness and fury. He braced his paws on the concrete, each growl pulsing like a tremor, as though ready to launch himself at the man standing before him. Elena gripped the leash tight, placing her body between Rex and the strange man, using all her strength to restrain the dog. She knew Rex never reacted this way without a serious reason. "Sir, step back," Elena said firmly, raising a hand like a warning sign. "Right now." The man tried to maintain a smile, but it was crooked, quivering at the edges. I already said, I'm the child's grandfather," he stammered, quickly pulling out a wallet from his coat pocket. "Here, my ID, Jacob Morgan, same last name as her mother. I have every right to pick her up." Ava had backed up all the way to a tree, now hiding behind Rex's large, sturdy body. She trembled slightly, eyes never leaving the man. Her small hands clutched the straps of her backpack tightly, and her lips moved like she was about to cry. "That's not my grandpa," Ava whispered. Then suddenly summoning courage, she took a deep breath and said louder, "He's lying. I don't know him. I've never seen him before." The man froze. In his eyes, Elena caught a flicker of confusion, then tension. "The child's just confused," he said, trying to compose himself. "I can call my daughter her mother to prove it." Elena kept her gaze fixed on him, but one hand quietly pressed a panic button on her radio, sending a silent emergency signal straight to the main office. By now, the atmosphere in the schoolyard had shifted. A few parents were cautiously approaching, concern etched into their faces. One father placed a hand on his child's shoulder, guiding them back. A teacher, Ms. Jensen, who had been helping a first grader with their backpack, stopped and discreetly pulled out her phone. Her eyes met Elena's for a brief moment. A shared understanding passed silently between them. The air was no longer peaceful. It was taut, like a violin string, ready to snap at the slightest pressure. "Sir," Elena stepped forward, her voice sharper now. "What's the mother's name?" The man opened his mouth, but hesitated a beat before replying, "It's Rebecca." Elena's eyes narrowed. That wasn't right. Ava's mother's name was Rachel, not Rebecca. A small mistake, but in Elena's mind it was a bright red flag. Someone truly close would never forget their own daughter's name, let alone confuse it. Rex barked again, louder this time, more ferocious. A few nearby children started crying. One mother pulled her child into her arms. Rex kept pulling, as if waiting for Elena to give the word to attack. "Sir," Elena said, her voice now fully commanding, "I am ordering you to stay where you are. Do not move. We've called the police. They're on their way." The man's eyes widened. "What, you're detaining a senior citizen picking up his granddaughter over a dog?" "Not just any dog," Elena shot back. "This is a retired K-9 from a criminal investigations unit, and the child says she doesn't know you. That's more than enough to hold you until law enforcement arrives." In that instant, the man glanced around, just a flick of the eyes, a glance toward the rear gate of the school. Elena saw it, a calculated look, a plan to run. Rex growled so loudly that the remaining children instinctively backed away. A teacher shouted, "All students back to your classrooms right now!" Ava sobbed. Elena turned to shield her hand, now gently resting on Rex's back, ready. Suddenly, the man took a step back, hand moving into his coat, very fast. Elena shouted, "Don't move hands where I can see them now!" Rex let out a thunderous bark, one that echoed across the entire pickup zone. Elena stepped forward, positioning herself between him and the girl. The man froze, then slowly pulled out his wallet and a crumpled sheet of paper that looked like a court order. Here, a guardianship order. I'm the temporary custodian. Elena didn't reach for it. She took a half step back, eyes locked on his hands. We'll wait for the officers to verify. You're not going anywhere. Ava had collapsed to the ground by now, pale and shaking, clutching Rex's leash as though it were the only thing anchoring her to safety. Over and over through broken breaths, she repeated, "He doesn't smell like Grandpa. Not him. Not him." At the edge of the courtyard, a police car turned in through the main gate lights flashing. And in that moment, the whole schoolyard held its breath. The white and blue patrol car sped into Pine Ridge Elementary student pickup zone, red and blue lights spinning their reflections, flashing across classroom windows and car windshields. Two officers stepped out, one male, one female, both in full uniform, their eyes sharp, their movements decisive. Lieutenant Karen Daniels, the female officer, quickly made her way to where Elena was holding on to Ava. The little girl was still trembling. Her face flushed from crying, but her eyes stayed fixed on the strange man standing across the lot. His smile had vanished. The calm, grandfatherly facade was gone, replaced by something colder, calculating. Daniel stepped in front of the man. "Your name, Jacob Morgan," he replied, holding out his ID. "I've already shown my documents. This is all a misunderstanding." Daniels didn't argue. She took the ID and looked closely. She was well-versed in identity fraud, and in cases involving children, even the smallest inconsistencies had to be taken seriously. Suddenly, Rex barked again, but this time not at the man. He was staring directly at the dark brown leather briefcase slung over the man's shoulder. Elena narrowed her eyes, looking from Rex to the bag. The dog was now pulling hard at the leash, stepping sideways, growling deeper, not in warning, but like a predator locking in on its prey. The kind of growl Rex used to give when tracking drugs or weapons. Daniels furrowed her brow. "Sir, I need to inspect that bag." "There's no need," the man replied quickly, hugging the bag closer to his side. "Just some medical papers and personal items. You have two options. You can consent voluntarily, or we'll document your refusal and file for a warrant." "I strongly suggest you cooperate," Daniel said coldly. The man hesitated. A faint twitch flickered across his lips. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "Fine, but you're all blowing this way out of proportion." Daniels pulled on rubber gloves and placed the bag on the hood of the patrol car. She slowly unzipped it. At first glance, everything looked ordinary: some paperwork, health brochures, a small notebook. But within seconds, her expression changed. She carefully pulled out a small glass vial with a faded label, midazolam, prescription only. A powerful sedative typically used for short-term surgical anesthesia, strictly prohibited for personal carry without medical justification. Beneath it was a coil of white zip ties neatly bundled like it had just been purchased. And then, Daniels froze. Her hand paused over a soft pink child's hat embroidered in gold thread with the name Emily. Elena stepped closer, her heart pounding. Ava, eyes wide, looked at the hat and whispered, "That's not mine." Daniels turned to her partner. "Call dispatch. Search the National Missing Child Database. Name Emily, age 5 to 8, last seen within the past 2 months. Prioritize any cases near Colorado." The male officer nodded and stepped away to make the call. Daniels glanced at Elena, exchanging a grim look. She muttered to herself, "I've heard of this. There was a girl, Emily Foster, 6 years old, vanished in Utah 6 weeks ago." A shiver crawled down Elena's spine. Daniels continued searching the bag. In a zip-in compartment, she found a roll of black duct tape and a handkerchief with floral patterns. It carried a faint, pungent scent, a mix of perfume and something damp, chemical. She didn't need more evidence. This was not a misunderstanding. This was an active abduction attempt intercepted at the final moment. Daniel stood up and turned back to the man, her voice now sharp as a blade. "Mr. Morgan, you are being taken into custody for suspected involvement in attempted child abduction, in possession of controlled substances without authorization." The man erupted. "You have no right. I'm the girl's guardian. Someone's setting me up. You're all being deceived." But as he shouted, Rex never took his eyes off him. Ears perked, eyes narrowed, as if the dog already knew. This man wasn't working alone. The sound of handcuffs snapping shut around the man's wrists rang out across the Pine Ridge Elementary schoolyard, cold and sharp, like a bell of reckoning. The tension which had stretched the air like a drawn wire now dropped into an eerie silence. Everyone around suddenly realized that their worst suspicions had just become reality. He was no grandfather. According to the initial ID verification from the police database, his real name was Thomas Edward Langston, 64 years old, a suspect in 2 past child abduction investigations, one in Illinois in 1998 and another in Oregon in 2011. Neither case ever led to conviction. As always, he vanished before the law could close in. But this time was different. No vague witness statements, no technical loopholes. This time Rex had sniffed him out. Ava had spoken up. And the briefcase held undeniable evidence. As the patrol car carrying Langston rolled away from the school, Lieutenant Daniels immediately contacted the Denver branch of the FBI. What had unfolded before them was no isolated incident. It was a pattern, a chain, a system. The investigation widens. Just 2 hours after Langston's detainment, 3 FBI agents arrived at the local police department, led by Special Agent Helen Shaw. They brought laptops, forensic kits, and a case file on Langston so thick it looked like a brick. "We've had eyes on him for years," Shaw told Daniels and Elena inside a small conference room. "He was like a ghost, no fixed address, no bank account, no vehicle registered in his name. But this time," she tapped the USB drive recovered from his briefcase, "we may finally stop him. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find out who else is involved." The USB had been expertly hidden, sealed behind a felt-lined compartment, glued in so tightly that it would have gone unnoticed by most. But not Rex. A retired canine's instincts had uncovered what years of surveillance couldn't. Once decrypted by FBI cyber forensics, the contents of the USB stunned the room. The master folder labeled Prospects. Inside 12 subfolders, each labeled with names like Denver Option A, Meadowview Trial, Bayfront Tier 1. Each folder contained long-range photos of children taken at schoolyards, bus stops, playgrounds. Notes attached to some images read, "Age 9 quiet, often waits alone. 5-minute gap in supervision. No camera coverage at pickup area." Elena felt a chill run through her bones. There was Ava pictured sitting on the school steps counting red cars just as she always did. Another image showed Maya, a student at Harborview Elementary, where Rex had growled uncharacteristically during a routine walk the week before. Not just images. There were videos, 2 secret recordings of children playing Walking Home Innocent Moments turned into prey profiles. A predatory map and a sickening catalog. In another folder labeled Behavior Log, the children were listed under unique ID codes. Each entry included name if known, school, dismissal time, habits, play routines, whether they walked alone, waiting spots, resistance rating, low/medium, high. Agent Shaw turned her laptop screen toward Elena, her breath caught in her throat. "He was rating them like products," Elena whispered. "And he wasn't working alone," Shaw added. "We believe Langston was just one link in a much larger network." Rex lay still beneath Elena's chair, but his ears twitched at every sound. Even in retirement, he was ready for action. Elena reached down and ran a hand along his back. "There are more of them out there, Ibiki. Aren't there?" Rex, a darker discovery. Hidden communication. FBI tech specialists uncovered an encrypted text file opened using an anonymous browser application. Inside were chat logs between Langston and someone using the alias Rook. The messages discussed new candidates from loosely monitored schools, How to move inventory after selecting a target. Ideal abduction windows. Thursdays or Fridays between 3:10 through 3:20 p.m. But it was one line that made Elena go still. Trial run failed, dog interference. Need to reassess. Rex had stopped them, not just saved Ava. He had derailed a larger plan already in motion. Nationwide operation activated. That same night, the FBI launched a coordinated federal response scanning all leads connected to the USB contents. They discovered 3 other schools with children appearing in the test folders. Rex and Elena were officially requested to assist, not only because of Rex's instincts, but because he had already reacted to those locations during the previous visits, growling, pacing, sensing something was wrong. The arrest of Langston was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a manhunt that would stretch across the country. After Langston was arrested and taken to the Pine Ridge County Station, FBI agents immediately launched a deeper investigation. A digital forensics team was summoned to analyze all data from his phone and laptop. What first caught their attention was a set of encrypted messages sent via an anonymous messaging app, the kind only seasoned criminals knew how to use. Once decoded, the FBI discovered 5 brief, chilling messages, each sounding like a tactical directive. Option 1 confirmed. Window of opportunity, Thursday. Low risk. Backpack matches. Proceed as planned. These messages had been sent just days before Langston appeared at Pine Ridge, proving he wasn't acting alone. Someone else was coordinating, perhaps even commanding. More disturbingly, the language was cold, methodical, strategic, and it confirmed that Ava had only been one of many targets. Elena and Rex returned to the front lines. Elena Cruz, once a federal agent before retiring to recover from PTSD, was formally brought back as a consultant because Rex, the retired K-9, would only respond to her voice. When briefed on the encrypted orders and possible accomplices, Elena simply stroked Rex's head and whispered, "We're not done yet, old friend." The next morning, Elena and Rex were taken to another school, 12 miles from Pine Ridge Harbor, View Elementary, where a suspicious report had surfaced the week before a white van had been parked near the playground during dismissal time, lingering unusually long. But at the time, nothing substantial warranted an investigation. Now everything was different. Rex was unhooked and allowed to freely roam the school grounds. Unlike his previous alert at Pine Ridge, there was no loud barking this time, just a tense, measured silence. As Rex moved slowly, nose glued to the ground, ears swiveling like radar. Near the back fence of the playground, Rex stopped. A low, throaty growl rumbled from his chest. It was subtle, but Elena understood. There was something here. She immediately requested surveillance footage from the rear security camera. On screen appeared the white van exactly as reported, engine running for 14 minutes, but no one exited. The driver wore a hoodie, head bowed, face hidden, the license plate fake. The FBI confirmed the timing, method, and vehicle all matched Langston's MO, but this van, it belonged to someone else, a second predator. That same afternoon, a rapid response task force was formed. Using data from phone pings and location tracking, investigators traced the suspicious van to an abandoned apartment complex in a decaying neighborhood just 4 kilometers from Harborview. At 4:00 p.m., Elena, Rex, and an FBI team surrounded the site. But when they breached the unit, it was empty. Rex didn't stop. His nose scanned every dusty hallway, weaving between debris, trailing something invisible to human eyes. Then suddenly Rex spun and sprinted, bolting through a broken exit door. "Rex!" Elena shouted, chasing after him. They found him darting through a back alley behind the complex, weaving past garbage bins and puddles of filth. And then a man ran. The FBI team gave chase, but Rex was already ahead, leading the pursuit. The man tried to escape through a narrow alley that ended in a dead-end wall. No way out. Rex didn't hesitate. Like lightning, he lunged and latched onto the man's arm, dragging him to the ground with textbook precision. Elena rushed in, handcuffs drawn. "FBI, don't move!" The man screamed in pain. "I didn't touch her. I didn't do anything." But in his coat pocket, agents found a printed color map of Harborview Elementary, hand-marked with a child's name circled in red, Maya J. They also discovered an unused rubber glove and a small bottle of sedatives in another pocket. A name, a role, and a network. The man's name was Calvin Royce Miller, 52 years old. A homeless drifter with prior arrests for theft and trespassing, but no known charges involving children. Until now. Back at the station, Calvin began talking. He claimed he was just the executor and that Langston was the real mastermind. The two had connected through a darknet forum dedicated to targeting vulnerable children, those often picked up late, withdrawn, or socially isolated. They pick kids who are quiet, lonely, kids nobody notices. All we had to do was watch and report. The case had now grown far beyond a failed kidnapping. It had become the exposure of a professional trafficking network with roles, hierarchy, and communication channels. And Rex, a dog once thought to be long retired, was the key that had unraveled the entire web. Inside the FBI's Special Investigations Unit in Denver, the room was steeped in the cold, pale glow of computer monitors. Hundreds of files decrypted from Thomas Langston's personal laptop and USB were now unraveling a real-life nightmare. No one in the room spoke. Each keyboard tap, each mouse click, cut through the silence like a restroom through heavy fog. On the main screen appeared a simple interface, a massive data sheet listing children's names, ages, photos, schools, dismissal times, walking routes, whether they were picked up, their waiting habits, how they responded to strangers. This wasn't educational research. It was a targeting matrix one used to profile prey. And the way this network tracked children, cold, meticulous, void of any human empathy, was as chilling as it was precise. Child profiles. A living graveyard of potential victims. Special Agent Helen Shaw stood behind the digital forensics technician, arms crossed, latex gloves gripping her forearms so tightly they'd turn white. He kept it all here, every step they took. Every tiny habit, she muttered. Within a folder labeled Denver Tier 1, the first two names to appear were Ava Morgan and Maya Sandler. Elena Cruz, standing beside Rex, choked back a gasp when Ava's photo loaded. It was a candid shot taken from across the street, Ava sitting on the school steps counting red cars. That quiet, innocent moment had been turned into data for a predator. Below her photo were notes. Often waits alone, no direct supervision for 10-15 minutes. Mother works in medical field, often late. Quiet shows tendency to trust strangers, observed over 2 weeks. Will likely approach if called by name. And the most disturbing line, resistance level low, priority high. Next to Ava's file was Maya's, a third grader from Harborview, where Rex had growled the week before during patrol. Notes beneath Maya's image included, frequently waits at rear gate of school. Parents are separated, picked up by rotating relatives. Often wears headphones, easy to approach from behind. And at the bottom, next trial candidate, status under observation. Elena felt like she was staring at a death list, only the children on it were still breathing. Not just a list, a systematic hunt. FBI analysts soon realized Langston and his accomplices weren't acting randomly. They had constructed a research-grade profiling operation. There were separate files evaluating ease of access, parental oversight levels, number of surveillance cameras nearby, estimated community reaction if the child were to disappear. A 6-year-old girl named Lily Foster, missing in Denver 6 weeks earlier, was listed in a folder called Bayfront Trial. In her photo, she was mid-hop playing hopscotch with a wide grin. Beneath the image, highly approachable, walks home alone, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Only nearby camera obstructed by illegally parked car. Action taken completed, effectiveness high. No alert had gone out for Lily, not because no one cared, but because no one saw when she was taken. Now her absence existed only as a single line in a depraved report, the sickening scoring system. In a separate Excel file, agents found a ranking chart, a scorecard of children's abductability across Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. Each child was rated on a 1 to 5 scale using criteria like a resistance likelihood, adult supervision, media attention risk, emotional attachment to community. Elena saw Ava ranked in the top 5. Next to her were children the FBI had never heard of. No reports filed, no searches ongoing. They may have already vanished without anyone realizing it. Some kids just slipped through, Shaw said hoarsely, because of unstable families, negligent schools, or worse, because they were chosen in advance. Elena knelt and gently stroked Rex's back. For the first time in years, the world felt more terrifying than it ever had during her years as an active agent. Bigger than anyone thought notes within the system suggested they weren't operating alone. Each child's file had codes, likely transaction IDs, in some kind of black market system. Some of the entries read, A12 delivered successful. B4 canceled, subject screamed. C7 camera error, retry later. They weren't just choosing, they were testing, failing, repeating. And their products were children. Shaw whispered, pointing at the monitor. They're rating these kids like merchandise, tagging them, tracking them, assigning value. What we're up against isn't just kidnappers. It's a trafficking organization, methodical, calculated, and disturbingly discreet. Elena clenched her fists, eyes reddening as Ava's face appeared again on the screen. Ava, now safe at home, playing with Rex on her bed, completely unaware that she'd once been ranked on a predator's shortlist. But she was safe. And more importantly, Rex had changed her fate. As the FBI delved deeper into the data recovered from Langston's USB and computer systems, they began to realize something chilling. What they thought was a regional string of kidnappings was merely the tip of a much larger underground network, one that spanned far beyond state or even national lines. In a specially encrypted folder, one that took nearly 10 continuous hours to unlock, investigators found a file labeled Archive Candidates EU. No one expected that just a few clicks would reveal an entirely new list, this time filled with names, faces, and profiles not from the US, but from across Europe. One name made veteran FBI agent Helen Shaw freeze in place. Anuka Vavrinov, Prague, Czech Republic. 7 years old, missing, November 2021, Anuka. A little girl with soft brown curls, wide, solemn eyes, and a gaze that seemed too knowing for her age, as if she knew she was being watched. In the image, she was standing at the gates of an orphanage in Prague, holding a torn doll. There was no smile. There had been no media coverage about her disappearance, no missing persons report, no parental complaint, because Anuka had been unadopted for over 5 years, and when she vanished, the orphanage's internal report said only, ran away from facility, no search required. But Langston hadn't overlooked her. Using GPS-tagged photo data, the FBI traced Langston's travel history. He had been in Prague at the exact time Anuka disappeared, staying at a modest inn near the central train station. In recovered footage from a nearby pharmacy's old security camera, agents found an image of a silver-haired man in a gray coat, walking with a little girl matching Anuka's description. Helen Shaw slammed her fist gently against the table. He was in Prague, Oregon, and Illinois, all places where children went missing without clear cause. He's not just a lone wolf in the US, he's a node in an international network. The hunt goes global. Interpol was contacted immediately. Langston's profile was added to the Red Notice list. At the same time, the FBI launched a nationwide operation coordinating with federal agencies, state police, and international airport security. The digital dragnet began sweeping for connections. Individuals who had communicated with Langston through anonymous platforms, IP addresses matching the timestamps of network activity, suspected drop-off or pickup locations, bus stations, highway rest stops, remote motels. In Miami, agents uncovered a middleman in possession of over 50 candid photos of children, all scraped from networks identical to Langston's. In Portland, another man living out of an RV was arrested with 3 burner phones, 4 encrypted hard drives, in a secret mailbox containing birthday cards featuring altered images of children. In Atlanta, a retired linguistics professor known for frequent international travel was discovered using darknet software to assess suitability of children based on publicly available photos. In each case, the signs were subtle but consistent, a process of surveillance assessment, approach, handling, and transfer. Rex and Elena, symbols of a silent war, back in Pine Ridge. Elena and Rex were invited to a special strategy meeting with Agent Shaw and the FBI's Rapid Response Unit. Though Rex was technically a retired service dog, it was his instincts, his unshakable alert, that cracked open the first door into this criminal empire. "We're not just looking for perpetrators," Helen told the room. "We're hunting an international production chain of suffering inhuman, deeply coordinated and disguised by the politeness of modern society." Rex sat quietly in the back of the room, but his eyes were anything but tired. He was listening, sensing, waiting. Elena knew even if this battle had grown far beyond what either of them had imagined, Rex had never been more ready. And in the days that followed, not a single country within the international child alert system stayed idle. Langston might have been captured, but his network lived on, and now the real war had begun. Pine Ridge Elementary was no longer quite the same. The place that had once been the epitome of safety and joyful dismissal now held a quiet layer of memory, a memory of the afternoon when the line between peace and darkness had been thinner than anyone imagined. But thanks to a brave little girl and an aging dog with impeccable instincts, that darkness had never managed to claim its prey. 3 days after the incident, a small ceremony was held in the school's auditorium. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't grand, but it was warm and more moving than any headline could capture. At the center of the stage sat a small white-covered chair, and on it sat Rex, upright and still wearing a red bandana embroidered with the school's logo, ears perked, eyes steady as the auditorium burst into applause. The principal stepped up to the podium holding a wooden plaque engraved in gold, "Special Honor Pine Ridge's Silent Hero, awarded to retired K-9 Rex for his bravery, loyalty, and for stopping a crime before it could ever begin." Everyone rose to their feet, clapping. Elena, standing beside Rex, couldn't hide her emotion. Her hand gently rested on Rex's back, the same back that once took shrapnel during a mission years ago, and now carried the weight of a new purpose, protecting the innocent. While national headlines focused on the FBI investigation and arrests across the country, local news told a quieter story, the extraordinary bond between Ava and Rex. Not sensationalized, but shared as a survival lesson for parents, teachers, and children alike. A little girl healing. One bark at a time, Ava didn't return to school immediately. She needed time. In those early nights, Ava would often wake up from sleep, clutching Rex tightly, whispering to her mother, "Will he come back?" Rachel Morgan, Ava's mother, could only hold her daughter close and say softly, "No, sweetheart, he won't, because Rex won't let him, and neither will I." Elena visited often, bringing Rex along for backyard visits. They played fetch. They walked circles around the nearby park. They told stories on the porch. And little by little, Ava smiled again. Genuine smiles, not forced or cautious. A hero in crayon. 1 week later, Ava returned to school. In her hands was a crayon drawing she'd spent all night completing. Rex, wearing a superhero cape, standing guard at the school gate, with his leash glowing gold like something out of a cartoon. When invited to speak to her class, Ava stepped up to the front. She trembled slightly, but her eyes didn't shy away. If someone makes you feel scared or weird, you can say no. You're allowed to run. You're allowed to yell. That's not being bad. That's being smart. That's being brave. Rex taught me that. The classroom went quiet for a moment. Then one small hand went up. Then another. Then a boy with curly hair whispered, "If someone scares me, I'm gonna roar like a lion. Ava laughed. For the first time in weeks, that laugh rang like silver bells. Say no, like Ava. That day, the school launched a new safety initiative called Say No Like Ava. Weekly workshops were introduced teaching children how to recognize danger, trust their instincts, and act quickly. Ava became the symbol, and Rex, the living emblem of timely protection, sat in every session, tongue out lazily, but eyes always alert. No one needed to say it out loud, but everyone understood if Rex hadn't barked that day, if Ava hadn't found the strength to say no, if Elena hadn't acted on instinct, one life could have been lost, and the network might have taken another child. Rex didn't know he was a hero, but perhaps that's what made him the most worthy of the title. The quiet thank you. That night, in the window-lit calm of Ava's bedroom, she placed a special bowl of food beside Rex's soft fleece bed. She stroked his head gently and whispered, "Thank you for barking. No one else heard it, but you did. You knew." Rex didn't reply. He simply rested his chin on her lap and let out a soft sigh as if to say, "It's what I do, and I always will." Everyone thought it was over. After the arrests in Miami, Portland, and Atlanta, after the stage lights dimmed on Rex and Ava, after the long applause at the Pine Ridge ceremony. But those who had spent years chasing evil, like Elena Cruz and Agent Helen Shaw, knew the truth: real evil never disappears. It only changes shape. A new email arrived from the FBI's California field office, just a short line: "Suspicious connection found between a drop location in Fresno and a login account previously seen in Langston's darknet system. Subject identity unknown. Activity ongoing." Helen read the line and passed it to Elena. Only a handful of words, but they dropped like a stone in her chest. Elena didn't speak. She sat there next to Rex, gently stroking his head, as she always did. Beneath the table, Rex let out a soft, low whine, not from pain, but from instinct. He felt something. He always did. "We're not done," Helen whispered. "I know," Elena replied. Coming back had never been part of the plan. Her old shoulder injury still ached on cold mornings. The insomnia from that mission years ago still woke her some nights. She had sworn she'd left that world behind. But Rex, the old warrior who never truly rested, had brought her back. She looked at him now, aging, his eyes cloudier than before, his steps sometimes halting after a long walk. But his ears still lifted at every unfamiliar sound. His heart still surged at the scent of danger. No one had to call them. No badge was needed, no orders given. Elena already knew she and Rex would continue. The intel from Fresno revealed a pattern frighteningly familiar. Candid images of children, behavioral tracking, encrypted audio notes. But this predator was different. He didn't use digital files like Langston. He wrote things by hand. He spoke in person. He left no trace online. He was smarter, more careful, more dangerous. A series of school security camera stills showed a man in a gray cap blending in with the crowd at dismissal time. His walk was slow. His eyes moved fast, flitting across the faces of every child. He didn't linger. He didn't speak. But there was something wrong. When Rex was brought a package wrapper from Fresno to sniff a simple crumpled piece of paper, he barked. Loud and certain, the same way he'd barked when he first smelled Langston's coat. Who was this new man? Where was he hiding? No one knew, but Rex did. That morning at the Morgan household, Ava was sitting under the tree in the yard reading her book when Elena came to say goodbye. She knelt to hug Ava, holding her for a long moment. Rex patted over, rested his muzzle on Ava's lap, then licked her hand gently like a silent promise. "Is Rex going away again?" Ava asked, her voice tinged with worry. Elena nodded. "He has to help other kids now, just like he helped you." Ava wrapped her arms around Rex's neck. "Then he has to come back. Okay, I'll be waiting." Rex didn't bark. He stood up, looked back one last time, then walked beside Elena, stepping off the white stone path, the same path that once stood between a little girl and the hands of evil toward a future protected by the instincts of a true guardian. On the highway to Fresno, the sun spilled gold across the dry hills. A black SUV sped forward, tires whispering against the asphalt, carrying Elena and Rex into the dusk. No sirens, no fanfare. Just two souls were bound by belief that if they didn't go, another child might vanish. Inside the cabin, Rex lay quietly with his head on Elena's lap. His eyes were closed, but his ears twitched every few seconds like antennas catching the pulse of danger. Not because of the road noise, not because of the wind, but because of something only he could feel. The darkness hadn't left. The fight wasn't over. Rex was still listening, and Elena was still watching.